Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining the Boardroom Club today in the first interview in the Unicorn Conference, featuring top executive from company worth over $100 billion. My name is Yaron Garmazi, second year MBA here at Cornell, and I'm joined here by classmates and a good friend of mine, Jacob Chizunza. Jacob?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Today, we are fortunate enough to interview none other than the Hailo co-founder and CEO, Orr Danon, and Hailo CFO and COO, Yaron Garmazi. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
So again, thank you all and Yaron for joining us. So the way we have been thinking about this interview is for you to tell us your story. Then we are going to have Q&A section at the end. Sounds good?
Perfect. Happy to be here.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'll start with you all. What brought you into the tech world and to the entrepreneurial path? And being specific, to open the company, the AI company at the point where it wasn't a big thing.
Yeah, so a little words about my background. So prior to this company, I was with the Israeli military intelligence for all of my career. Been doing a couple of stuff around hardware, in the most recent years, cyber and embedded. And I've been, the army is like a big corporate in some ways, especially the tech side of it. And I had a feeling for a couple of years that I wanted to do something on my own. It might sound a bit funny, but I think that the event that broke me is that I wanted to ask for a $1 million budget for something, and I got it approved in 2 days. I was so good at working with the system that I felt it was too easy. And that kind of made me think, am I really challenging myself? And then I decided to do the unsmart act of saying, let's challenge ourselves and start a company. And that's, I think, during this thought process, I was thinking a lot about what I want to do. So I was meeting up with like-minded people that are also looking to do stuff. Back then it was late 2016, early 2017, and the big things on the plate were crypto. Crypto was back then already started to be a big thing. I wasn't the intelligent. I understood it could be very useful for money laundering, but I didn't think that's what I want to do for a living. So I decided to skip it. I missed the crypto bubble, but never mind that. The other thing was security for IoT. That there was a golden age of companies starting with security for IoT. It was clearly a useful thing to do, but for me, with my background, it sounded like a bit, I don't know, boring. It's not really boring, but for me, it sounded back then boring. And then a friend, Avi, who is my co-founder and our CTO, was back then with Texas Instruments. He was the CTO of their wireless division. We met in a coffee shop, and he showed me this new thing called AI. And even back then in 2017, were just the early days of things starting to work, you could immediately see that, wow, this is something new. This is a real game changer in technology. It's not just another incremental improvement to communications or to security in my regard or so on. So this is something that's really going to change the world. And we realized that the processors are going to be a thing that's going to be extremely disrupted, because just by looking at the code that describes machine learning, you can very quickly see it's not the code by which computers have evolved. Computers have evolved by looking at code that looks like the C language and being optimized further and further. And you look at a description of a neural network, you see clearly the hardware ain't going to work this way. So that's how we started. We're going to do a hardware company for AI.
Fascinating, all very fascinating story. And we have a question for you, Yaron. So can you tell us a bit what brought you to the tech world, and specifically you work in a chip company over the past, the SPC, Passave, Nogatech. Can you share with us how different was the chip world when you work on this company to the current chip world?
Okay, I will be happy to. So first of all, also a few words on my background. So other to be your father, for the last 30 years, I'm leading technology companies all the way through the early stages till becoming a public company and maybe even to be acquired by some of the big guys. And as you mentioned, the first 15 years of my career were around semiconductor company, in some way very similar to the situation of Hailo and to the Hailo story, even though probably smaller. By the way, 3 of those companies I took public in the NASDAQ, and all of them were acquired by some of the big guys. Intel that acquired DSPC in 1999 for $1.6 billion after we did 2 public offerings. Passave that was acquired by PFC CRI 2007 for $350 million. And now we are going to do the biggest one and the more interesting one. But other than this, I think that the main difference this time compared to what was happening, I would say 20, 25 years ago, is the number and the size of the market. DSPC IPO was a $30 million IPO with a valuation of $70 million. $30 million we raised, $70 million valuation. And by the way, after 4 years, it was acquired by Intel for $1.6 billion. So it was a very nice return for investors. This day, you will not see a pump company going public in a valuation of 50, 60, $70 million. The scale is much bigger. The economy is much bigger, but also the opportunity is much bigger. At that point, it was the dot-com, before the dot-com bubble with the internet as the main thing. Today, definitely it's the AI as the main thing. And the Hailo is positioned from day one as a cheap AI company. So the right company, the right place, it's going to be a fun ride.
Definitely. It seems like very promising indeed. And I have a question for you. So, I mean, you play with all the big competitors in the market, Intel, NVIDIA, Texas Instruments. How do you approach the market? And specifically, do you have any advice of do and don't in this current environment?
Yeah, so maybe to give some orientation on the company. So we said we're an AI chip company. Our main focus is on the edge, so things that live outside the data center. And where in this kind of application, it could be security cameras, it can be cars, it can be industrial robots, it can be all kind of robotic accessories that you have in your home or in your factory, medical, aerospace, quite a few things that are out there. And what people care in the edge space, so that everybody wants to have high performance. They want to have the things that you can run on the cloud, so ideally as close as possible to that being able to run locally. But they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay in terms of buying a very expensive GPU, and they cannot afford the power consumption, which is typically starting not from the battery life, which is the obvious thing we'll all think about, but even before battery life, it just heats up too much. And anything that is deployed at scale can't really heat up too much. Think of your cell phones. There was a time like a few years ago when thermal management was not going very well and they started heating up in your ears. It was a period that lasted for about 2 or 3 years before that got fixed. So that was when they crossed the 5-6 watt range. So you can't really do something at scale outside if you're consuming too much power. So first of all, you have to identify what, especially in a tech play, and we are a deep tech play, identify what are the core technology that you're bringing to the table, capable of doing that is different from the others. So we built our architecture to specifically excel on these areas. We had also a hidden assumption, not so hidden, that we're choosing a type of battle that is hard for the big guys to catch on. And what do I mean by that? We chose to do a different architecture. Okay, and it may sound simple. I mean, if I can think of a good architecture for AI, why Intel can't? But it's actually very complicated. If you think about it, companies that are successful don't change their core architecture. I can give you examples from semiconductor. So you can think of Intel and the mobile, and now the AI revolution, in which, but take Intel and mobile, ARM, when they started rising in mobile, they were 100 times smaller, 1,000 times smaller than Intel. Intel could have developed the ARM processor 30 times without even noticing in terms of P&L. But there's something fundamental to the way the company is structured that relates to how the technology is architectured. You can see the reflection of the product architecture in the organizational chart and in the people that get promoted or don't get promoted based on previous success with that architecture. And you can also see examples from other fields. You can think, for those of you who remember Yahoo and Google. Yahoo was significantly bigger than Google for a long period of time, much time after Google was known, and they never pivoted because it was very hard to change this tree search that they had to something different without breaking all their customer base, all the loyalty that they ever earned, and so on. This is a step that people rarely take. So I think you need to have something that is fundamentally different, and you're relying on that won't be changing very quickly. The other thing is pick your battles. Unless you have an immensely better technology, and it's rarely the case. When you add everything up, you can have a big advantage, but it's rarely the case that you have 100x advantage or even 10x by the time you reach productization. So you can count on a 2x or 3x, but that's not enough if you're trying to hit a giant where their focus is, because they have better marketing, they have better channels, they can bundle it with other offerings and so on. So unless you plan to be acquired by that giant, and that's a very dangerous strategy, if that's the sort of thing that you can do, you need to pick areas that are meaningful, but are not within the main strategy, and where your big competitor that you're fearful from will be able to turn all their cannons to. So we were looking specifically at places which either we know that the other company's technology won't be able to scale up or down to, and in areas where we think for them there is a big business incentive not to enter this because it will hurt other businesses that they have. You can always have all these facts in line, but I think for us, these are kind of guidelines into battles that we can win.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Just keeping it on you, or adding another question. Can you elaborate how the AI-driven solution? Can you elaborate how the AI-driven solution that Hailo offers, and how transforming the edge of AI landscape is operating? Yeah.
Okay, so I think maybe I'll use a slide or two here just to.
Yeah, let me just give you a close. Just a second.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So maybe a word of background on our product line. So as I mentioned, we're a chip company. So our base product is chips, computer chips. We have different product families. Each one of them is aiming to serve different needs. So the first thing we brought up to the market was the Hailo 8 that you can see on the upper left-hand side here. You can think of this like a miniaturized GPU. This is a 17 millimeter by 17 millimeter, or like something like a 0.8 by 0.8 inch, or even smaller a bit, that can do something that I would say a mid-range or entry-level GPU can do, with a very small package and a very low power envelope, about 2 or 3 watts. The main areas that we targeted are video gateways. So there are actually 2 archetypes of video gateways that we are working with. One is the automotive industry, where we enable to build car computers that can process lots of camera streams in parallel, which is something that is starting to happen across a very wide range of car models in the coming years, not only in the high end. And the other big area is security and surveillance. So being able to do real things that you could up until now mainly do with servers that are equipped with heavy-duty GPUs, do this with really compact devices that can basically fit anywhere. I can give you an example of a big smart city program we have in Japan, in where the company that's a big integrator, they knew that they want to deploy many intelligent traffic analysis and so on traffic poles, You just couldn't fit it in a computer that took a GPU. It just would heat up and would be killed in Japanese sun. So instead, they worked with us and built something fanless, ruggedized that they could deploy at scale. This is one example of how things can become possible with power, efficiency, and performance. The other product line that we have is on the right-hand side, and that is vision processors that go directly into cameras and not only into video gateways. Here we add another layer of capabilities, which is the AI image enhancement. This is something that you all know. You might not know that you know, but you know from your smartphones. If you think about it, in the past few years, there are camera in the phone has improved dramatically, not because your lens is bigger. Sensors are a bit better, but not significantly. The main thing that happened is AI coming into photography and the ability to enhance the image with AI. This is something that mainly is working today on still images due to the computational complexity of this task. So our ability to do very high performance AI processing at low power consumption enables to do this on running video inside security cameras, where the biggest thing that from an integrator perspective happens is they work at night. They actually have night vision. So this is a big thing that is going to transform the camera industry. Camera industry, by the way, is not as small as you would think. About 250 million are being deployed each year. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's what's happening around the world for multiple use cases, smart cities, security, traffic monitoring, and so on. The big new wave is generative AI. So we're all seeing it in the cloud, but it's also coming to edge devices. Not just taking ChatGPT and trying to downscale it. That's not a good idea, in my opinion. But the ability of the main thing I think that is intriguing with generative AI is the ability to create natural user interfaces where you speak natural in your voice. Even someone with an Israeli accent like me can be understood by a good generative AI model and get it and speak in a natural language and not just orders that are scripted and so on. So this is something big. It's coming into many day-to-day devices. You can see a few examples in the coming 2 or 3 years, and a big thing we are working on. All these use cases, they are struggling in terms of getting high performance, which means good quality models running at good frame rate or tokens per second, and having all this with thermal and cost envelope that makes sense. This is our value proposition. To give you a sense maybe of the kind of customers the company like us works with, so this would be mainly enterprise, industrial, automotive manufacturers. You can see an assortment of things that are publicly announced. And some of you might recognize the very diverse geographical customer base and also from industry perspective. So in that sense, it's not your classical IT company. We are very global, so the same way that the electronics industry is very, very global. I hope this gives some context on the.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of like going on this one. So Yaron, it takes a lot of money to build a good chip company. Can you share with us some of the consideration? How much money like a company like Hailo, like maybe other company need to raise in order to come to, let's say, fruition and yeah.
Yeah, I started my session at the beginning and I mentioned the fact that 30 years ago, 25 years ago, a company went public in a valuation of $60 million and raised $30 million. The industry changed completely. First of all, in order to have so much technology in one semiconductor, you need many years of development. And in order to develop an hardware, in our case, so a semiconductor, you really need to invest a lot of money in the business. And it's not, by the way, just the hardware part. You need to come with a full-term solution that covers also the software part. In order to do it, it's many, many years of investment in terms of hardware, in terms of manpower. And you will find that companies that are going to the public market, most of the cases, semiconductor company raise many hundreds of millions of dollars before they went public. So in our case, it was disclosed. The last round of financing, for example, that was closed 3-4 months ago, we raised basically $130 million in a valuation of north of $1 billion. This is why you probably ask us to get to this unicorn conference, other than our nice faces and the fact that I'm your father. But other than that, yeah, a lot of money. More than $300 million were raised to the company, and probably we will do another funding at this point or in the near future, before we will tackle the public market. To make a long story short, probably $300 to $600 million is a realistic number for a successful company like us to raise before it becoming a public company and starting to make profits to the bottom line. In some cases, you can do it with less, but it is a cash incentive business, and a lot of money need to be injected to the company in order to take it to the next level. But then the reward is huge. You saw the list of customers, the type of industries that we are facing right now. It's going to be returned to the investors by the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
If you look at the public markets, by the way, today, a huge portion of the big companies in the market are semiconductor companies. And that's also something that I think, if you look 30 years back, was just not the case. Semiconductor industry is now over, I think, $600 or $700 billion this year.
Also, this is amazing statistics, and kind of like, or maybe like a question on this one. So we know like you need like to raise a lot of money in order like to bring the company to a stage when it's like mature. But can you tell us maybe a bit more about like other obstacles along the way, from being a small startup to until you start to gain like some customers along the way?
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is one of the most challenging parts, because as Yaron said, this is not a small players game. And customers, if you want to go at scale, are not looking for small players. And you don't want to go to niches. You want to go on things that are big. So you need to convince that you're worthwhile to rely on. Now, our type of customers, maybe you've seen their customer like Ebebe. Ebebe, for those who are not familiar, is a huge industrial conglomerate that is Swedish, I think, Swedish, yeah. And like Siemens, GE, and the likes. Convincing these kind of guys, by the way, they've already also invested in the company, that you are a reliable partner for the next 13, 14 years, where you just have 2 years of track record, is not a trivial task. So first, to make it easy, it takes 4 or 5 years to realistically to bring a semiconductor product with software, as Yaron described, to the market in a mature stage. So you have some years of track record by the time you get there. But you need to have a combination of elements. First, you need a real technological advantage. Without an advantage, you just have you have nothing to work with. So there must be a very compelling reason to work with you. Just being small and influenceable is not a good advantage. You want something fundamental, because the other side isn't stupid too. They also want to get an advantage. And then you need I think maybe the hardest part of bootstrapping, because for me to build that logo wall, public logo wall, the thing that I can disclose, of course, took a lot of effort. And every name I could put there would make the next name easier. Because once they know this company trusted us and that company trusted us, and so on and so forth, it makes the decision easier. We're not at a stage where you can say, like on Cisco, that nobody got fired for selecting Cisco. So I think you can get fired if you really screw it up if you chose Hailo. But I think you won't necessarily get fired for choosing a small company. And this is, I think, a big part of building your path to success. Now, I personally believe that this has another layer to it, which is fundamental, and that is it's not about just the marketing message. It's also about really maturing your product. And each and every customer that you're going through makes your product better, makes your team better, makes your execution sharper. And we've been working from the very early days. I think then less than a year than the company started, we already had some prototypes in the hand of customers. Of course, you need to find the right customers. It was clear to anyone that knows what they're doing that we are at least 3 years from being really with a product in the market. So you had to find players who are thinking for the long term. We, for instance, took a lot of focus on the automotive industry, the autonomous car. Back in 2018, everybody was talking about 2021 as the year everything will be autonomously driven in the streets. When you went to these, let's say, Audis, and you come to them and say, hey, this 2021 model that your CEO just announced in news, have you selected the hardware for it? No. And you realize that they are not really going to deploy, but they're working on it, they're trying. And that was a good match for us to start and build this cyclical process of iterating, working with customers, getting feedback. And this is something that typically software companies do much more easily. But I think also for deep tech, for hardware companies, it's something that you need to try and do, because the more you do it, the faster you get to a real product. And that's what you need to actually scale.
That's amazing. And Yaron, kind of like maybe the same question, but like different. So about you worked in a software company before Kaltura and others. So how different was like working in a software company than a chip company like Hailo?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are few differences, but I would count two of them, which are probably the main ones. First one, obviously the margins. A typical gross margin for a software company can go all the way up to 80, and in some cases even to 90%, because you don't really sell hardware. You sell a piece of software that after you develop it, most of the bottom line is coming straight forward. This is one example different. The other different is that in a semiconductor SaaS business, in the software SaaS business, you need to fight for your customers year after year, because you need to renew it to make it a real recurring revenue. In our business, it takes much longer, much harder to gain a customer, but as soon as you get it, it's almost forever. It's not forever, but it can be for the life of the company. A great example is the automotive industry that we are strong with. It takes you probably 7-8 years to get to production, but then it gets you 10 to 15 years to lose the account, because when you are there, you stay there, and they are going to order more and more parts forever. And this is what balance between both financial model. Less gross margin, more stickiness, and the numbers in semiconductor can be much bigger than what you see in the software business.
And maybe a follow-up question, is there any specific KPI that you look in maybe chip company mode and in a software, or just like specific to a chip company?
Yeah, I think that the main KPI in a chip company, not like in a software, is how much money you invested in the business in order to get the customer live. You invest so much money, and in some cases, it takes years of development to develop it, and then you started to measure the return of investment. In a software company, it's coming probably much faster, but the stickiness is much less than in a chip business. And as I mentioned, the margins are different, but not by the way the bottom line. So in terms of gross margin, in most of the cases, gross margin in a software company will be much higher, but to get a customer in terms of cost of acquisition for sales and marketing, you need much more to do in a software company, because you need to continue to gain customers again and again. In a semiconductor business, after you gain it, you made the investment mostly in R&D, then it's really become a very profitable, even if the gross margin can be just 50 or 60% and not 90%. The bottom line can be much higher.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. Taking it into the future, Yaron, sorry, Mr. O, for you, where do you want to see Hailo in a few years?
What I'm doing for the last 30 years is to create value for companies. And this is what we are trying to do here. We need to focus, we need to do the right things, to do as less mistakes as we can, because we are doing mistakes all the time. And if we will be able to achieve it, the game is to create value. If we will be able to continue and create and inject more and more value to the story, and the 1 billion is just the starting point from my point of view, since I joined the company just 6 months ago, we are going to build a lot of value to the company. And by the end of the day, it can either go public, maybe somebody will want to acquire the business because it's such a successful opportunity for them. But you need to focus on building value. If you build it, they will come. They will come, I mean, either investors from the public market or a potential buyer. But just focus in the daily build up and they will come by the end of the day.
Oh, thank you. And for you, same question, where do you want to see Hailo in the few years?
So I think if you look at the history of computers, every time there was a big revolution, giant companies were created, from all the way back to IBM, through Intel, Qualcomm, NVIDIA, and I think I think this is a real opportunity for these things to happen, and we want to be that name, the giant that was created when AI emerged.
All right. Thanks. I think in addition, just looking into that direction, where do you see the AI sector going in the next few years, and how do you think it will affect other sectors?
I think there are the twofold story here. One, which is a big thing in the hype cycle, we are now at, I think, a bit over the deep, is the AI as a mechanism for automation. It's something that started a few years ago, and I think it's going to improve our economy worldwide in many aspects significantly, because just think that you can do much better with the assistance of AI. Generative AI, which is now what we're starting to experience with ChatGPT. You try the new one, it's amazing. I think it's going to transform also the way we work and communicate with technology and with one another. I think it's too early to say where this will affect us, but it's so profound that I know it will transform many things we know. I don't know which ones, but many.
That's interesting. And Yaron, also, the same question, where do you see the AI sector going in the next few years? And how do you think it's going to affect other sectors?
Yeah, just because I'm much older than Orr, I will give you a few examples from the past. The first one was the revolution of the mobile phone. Everybody didn't know where it's going to go to, and people were afraid that it's going to kill other industries. And then came the internet, which was even a biggest challenge to everyone. By the end of the day, both of them improve our life significantly and allow other people to do other stuff and to develop, etc. I believe that what is happening right now with the AI can do exactly the same. It's going to be a challenge. We need to manage it right. But if we will do this, it can take our life to a much better place. And NVIDIA is now the big name behind this industry. Hailo can be a major player there and really help all of us to make our life better, this way or the other. So it's going to be a very exciting time to all of us.
So kind of like going next to the last phase of this interview, all the funny questions. So, let's start with you. I know that you have a very special hobby. Can you tell us what are your specific hobby that you like to do outside of making chips that change in the world?
I guess you're referring to my archaeological hobby.
Yeah.
So I'm also a hobbyist archaeologist. Something I started at the university. I try every summer to go volunteer in an archaeological excavation. It's not as difficult as you think. Most of the things are not dinosaur bones, but rather, especially in Israel, uncovering all kind of biblical era cities and so on. It's the reason I do it is because It's really fun in many ways. It's physical work, very hard physical work, very different from what I do right here, taking Zooms, building presentations, drinking with customers. Not It's a different mindset, different people, kind of seeing people that don't think like techies. I see techies all day long. So seeing people who think differently is an amazing experience. And also archaeology is a very different rhythm than technology and science, or it's not science, but then technology and engineering. You try to solve a very complex puzzle with very few control points. You can only dig. People think that you excavate the whole city, like if you've been to Pompeii. This is the very rare case. Usually you can excavate a very small portion of an ancient site, and you need to understand what was going on. I'll give you an example. I was digging in Khirbat Kayafa near Jerusalem, and I was helping to uncover a big stone, and the professor that was managing the excavation came and said, "What do you think this is?" I said, no, this one is misplaced. It should have been like this. And he said, "Oh, this is a two-tone stone. The guy that carried it here gave a lot of thought. You gave just 10 seconds of thought. You're wrong. Think again." And of course, he was right. It ended up being part of a tower, but it's actually a very nice thought exercise, a very different break, a nice break from my day-to-day life.
Nice. And Yaron?
Yeah, if you asked me 5, 6 years ago, I would love to run a lot and to do Ironman and other triathlons. Today, more than other things, I like to play with my granddaughter, which is my first one. So this is my hobby.
But you are going to return to Ironman, aren't you?
Nah, I'm too old for this stuff.
And a question for both of you. What keep you motivated? Or?
So for me, I think you describe it well. Building value, building things. This is the best satisfaction. The hard wins, the things you say, "Oh, I've done a lot of work, but now look what we've created." This is what drives me.
Nice. Yaron?
I would say working with great people. I don't want to say like, or just because they have such a nice faces, but I really like, many people ask me before how I succeeded to work with people that took them 6 public offerings, and then all my companies were acquired. By the end of the day is to wake up in the morning and to work with great people and to collaborate, to work together. This is motivate me all the time.
And maybe last and most funny question of them all. So, if you were not working at your job, what would you be? What would it be? Is it in archaeology or like something else?
Me? I cannot imagine myself not working all day long. So it's really beyond my scope of imagination. I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
If you can find me another job to work 24/7, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yaron?
For now, 30 years working, I will continue to do this, but I can see myself getting closer and closer to the Maldives probably. So we will see.
Nice. And okay, so I guess like that's it for the interview. So thank you very much for like both of you, Orr and Yaron. It was fascinating, to hear all your story, like how changing the world start from like just like a small idea. And yeah, thank for all the other folks here that joined us, like 50. Actually, I think we broke the record just like in the first interview of the last conference back in March. So thank you, everyone, and tune in for like tomorrow. We got Palantir and Jeffries. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Yaron. Sure.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Yossi.
All right.